All right, good morning. So thank you for coming to our open house. Um, because some of you are new and haven't done this with us before, I just want to kind of explain the frame for how we have done this. So I was hosting open house events through Nolative for quite some time, a couple of years ago. And what we did with them is we would set a topic. I would usually introduce the topic to the group. And then the concept is that my role here is as a moderator. So I'm here to help keep the conversation moving and that sort of thing. But it's all about everyone who's here, right? So this way, everyone gets a chance to contribute. You can ask each other questions. We can all kind of share our experience. We usually do keep it, as I was just saying to Amanda, pretty close to an hour, just so that it's predictable and it's something easy to do before work. Or for some of you, I know this is the end of your day, but I'm really glad to have everyone here. And then this recording is going to be available through both the GEMS College of Energy Medicine and through Nolative. So people who are members and associated with either group are going to be able to find the recording. Okay. So I'm mentioning that too, so you remember that other people might see this too. So if there's ever something that feels a little like, I want to say that to this group of people, but I don't necessarily want anyone else to hear that, you can ask us to pause the recording and we can do that too, so that the space feels safe. All right. So let's go ahead and jump in. And just for the sake of getting to know each other, because there's lots of people here that maybe haven't ever been connected. Yes, already putting things in the chat. Amazing. If we can all just take a quick moment to go around and introduce ourselves, just who you are, where you're from, that would be fantastic. So people can either start or I can start picking people out, whatever feels more comfortable. Okay, Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Childs. I'm from just north of Philadelphia, brain integration practitioner.
Thank you.
I'll go. I'm Amanda, and I'm in Northwest Arkansas. And yeah, I have a wellness spa where I do kinesiology for people.
So. Okay. I'll just start picking people out if that's okay, just to kind of keep it moving. So, Diana?
I'm Diana from Belgium. I'm Olga's student. I started in November and really excited about all this kinesiology magic.
Thank you so much. Marina, you put it in the chat already, but...
Hello, I'm okay. Two Marinas, okay.
Yeah, it's okay, it's okay.
I'm Marina from Ukraine. I live in Kyiv and I'm psychology, neuropsychology, and kinesiology practitioner.
Thank you. Mother Marina, do you want to say hi as well?
Yes, hi. I'm from Belgium and I'm student of Olga. And I met you in Tenerife this year, you know, so like I'm not practicing yet so much. I just, studying and I'm trying to do my best. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Helga?
My name is Helga. I live on Haida in Western Canada, and I have a Reflexology and Touch for Health Institute, a teaching institute. And the sun is just from the side, but so thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Ola, am I saying that right? There's Ola or Ola Zemenko.
Yes, I am. I'm from in Ukraine. Now I live in Odessa. I'm kinesiolog.
Thank you. Trina?
Hi, I'm Sharina from Kelowna, BC, Canada, a practitioner and student. I don't know what else we're saying, but thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Kasha?
I'm Kasha. I live in Kelowna, BC as well. And I've been a student of Alexis for many years. I love working with SIPs, the SIP system.
Thank you. Teresa?
Hi, I'm Teresa McDonald. I'm in Invermere, BC, was previously also from Kelowna. I've known Alexis for years as well. I'm slowly growing my business in energy kinesiology as well. So happy to have more information always.
Thank you. Olga, we were just introducing ourselves and saying where we're from. If you want to say hi. So you just popped in. Maybe after. Okay, that takes us then to my career. Do you want to say hi? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jorah. I'm her son. I've done Touch for Health and Gems, but I would like to redo them again, and hopefully 6.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna just sit over here and drink water out of my Darth Vader mug.
Life goals. All right. Hannah?
I'm Hannah. I'm her daughter, and I'm a Touch for Health instructor and just helping moderate today.
She taught me.
If you email the college for any reason, it's probably Hannah that is answering you and sending you things. And she's the one that gets stuff done. It's great. And I'm Alexis, and I know most people here. I've been an instructor of Touch for Health and GEMS and SIPS kinesiologies for a long time. So let's go ahead and look at this. Today's theme was about working with the chakras, and there are so many different ways of assessing and thinking about and working with chakras. And it's something that I often get asked about from my clients and from my students, like, how do we actually go about working with this in a really easy and effective kind of way? So I know how I usually work with these things, but I'm curious to see how other people are working with these. So let's just open it up in this general way first, and then we can kind of continue expanding and playing with the conversation as we see what happens. So first of all, does anybody have a way that they usually work with the chakra system that they find to be really effective?
Well, I'll start off just because I have a very simple way of doing it, but it's not in depth. So I'm very interested to see how I can expand how effective I can be with this. I basically just touch the chakra point, and I have a chakra mode, and I can do priority if I want, or I can do reactive and have 2 of them, or just do 1 at a time. And then I load that in my circuit with a pause lock, and then I just go from there like I do everything else to see what's going on with it. But my understanding of chakras is not bad, but it's not very in depth. So I'm just really looking forward to hearing what other people have to say. So.
Do people feel like they actually do know some about chakras, like understand some of the qualities and characteristics of each one, or is that not something that people have encountered? Some nods. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I find for myself, I've used it because I have some of the stuff from courses relating to chakras of like the different characteristics and stuff. I can sometimes challenge a chakra as a way of getting more information about what a particular issue is related to based on some of the things related to the chakras. But again, I also feel similar that like I have some knowledge about it, but it's not super in depth either. So resources are.
Okay. So Hannah was just putting in the chat that we have a little download, and I actually pulled it up for you before we started this today because I thought we might want to show it. So I'm just going to share the screen here for a second, and hopefully everybody can see it clearly right now. This is a little package that I ended up putting together was part of the Gems Dimensions class. And it's just a little PDF that has some basic information about each one of the chakras. So, the frequencies that are associated and some of the physiological associations that come along with each one, as well as the energetic associations and a few ideas about affirmations, right? This PDF is, if you were to go to, I don't know if Hannah put the link in the chat, but if you were to go to our website, yeah, and you go to the community, you can just download this. And if it's helpful to you, then amazing. And obviously this is it's a very basic understanding, right? There's so much about each one of these. Like a meridian, a chakra has a huge amount of information that's available there, both physiological and when we look at the energetic physiology, right? And the spiritual development of that energy center. So this gives you a starting place, and you can use this as a bit of a scan sheet or as an idea if you have them come up with your client. And then at the end of it, there is a little protocol. So I'm just going to scroll down. Okay, so if we get to this back page here, then what you're seeing is chakra mode, which Lisa was just demonstrating, right? So the structure, finger pad over the thumbnail. And then a little protocol. And this is just my basic protocol. Using the mode to define that, yeah, like it's a chakra, right? So you can use a muscle test to see, like, is this giving you an indicator change? And then you can hold this over top of each energetic center to see which ones give you an indicator change. And then you can use the information that's here to kind of scan and see, like, where is the stress? And then there's a really simple kind of correction. And the correction that I usually use with this is to work with governing vessel 24.5, which those of you who do SIPs, you know that all of Ian's corrections end up working with this point because of its relationship with the pineal and how we take in light. And when we're talking about the chakra system, working with the brow chakra and with light is extremely important. So for this correction, you just end up touching this point lightly. The same kind of pressure you would use for like your ESR points. And then you hold the other hand over whichever chakra you're trying to balance. So I'm going to show a throat because you can see it. So I end up holding here and then holding over the throat chakra. And you can also muscle test for like how far out does this hand need to be. Sometimes it's going to be up close and sometimes it might be further out depending on where in the energy system the imbalance is. And then you can work with it from there. And right off the bat, I've ended up talking more than I meant to because other people didn't have any systems that they were kind of wanting to jump into. Does that make sense? Or do people have questions about how we could work with that?
I have a question. When I'm working on a circuit, sometimes chakra will show up and I work with that, and sometimes I look at them directly. But is there any circumstances that would lead you to say, maybe I should look at the chakras? Or this sounds like, in other words, other than when it sort of comes across my plate versus proactively, what, do you have any sense of that? When and why I would go and look at that?
Anybody else have thoughts about that?
Well, for those of us that have trained with you with GEMS and SIPs, it's in our processes because it's in the GEMS scan sheets. Like if we're going through the elements and then structure, the structure, chemical, whatever, and it shows up in there in one of those places. And then in SIPs as well, like SIPs 4, I believe, is when we got into chakras. So it's on the scan sheets there. So that's usually how I get into it, is because it shows up within a session as where the body wants us to go.
Sometimes I also end up kind of checking it because I've like kind of read through that like basic list that Mom just showed. And so I have kind of an idea of a few things that might be associated with each one. And so if I am noticing like, oh, we've got issue with Danshan, an issue with sense of home, an issue with, you know, a few different things. I'm like, oh, well, then maybe I should check root chakra. Like this might be connected to those other things, right? So part of that is just kind of having read through that a couple of times and just having picked a couple things that I know are associated with each one. But okay, communication's a problem, maybe I'll check throughout. Like, and I find that using a sheet like that, or any other, you know, book that you have, helps me kind of connect those things together, right? And find information that might help the circuit as well. I don't know if that helps, Lisa, but.
Anyone else? How do we get into the chakra system? Like, why would we be looking here?
That's sort of like so many things. That's sort of my jumping off point. I feel like that's where all the things are coming from, like all the things. And so when I'm working with somebody, I do several different things, but I might have like somebody laying on the table and I'm feeling my way through. Now, typically these days I'm mostly using SIPs and loving that. But prior to that, I might have somebody laying on the table and you just can feel kind of where in their auric field where there might be a blockage in there. I don't know, just sort of feel that. But if I'm also, I do a thing where I'm working with somebody's feet and I have them soaking in magnesium salt water. And then I'm doing like a thing where I'm feeling in their foot where where I feel the sort of tension in their foot, and having them breathe into that energy center by providing some creative visualization. And then I can sort of reflect back to them, just because I'm familiar with, you know, things that are associated with each chakra, reflect back to them things that intuitively come to mind within that knowledge, what might be going on with them. And sometimes just hearing, hey, yeah, maybe that is going on with me. Hadn't really thought about that or something. Sometimes just acknowledging that and then breathing into that energy center is enough to kind of loosen it up where it can start to repair, right? And I don't know. I find that the breathing into the space, even if they aren't familiar with what a chakra does or what, you know, what is involved with that, just providing like some creative visualization for them to think about a color and think about that space of their body, or tighten up a muscle in that space of their body with their breath and then relax it on the exhale, or something like that, where they're bringing their own attention and energy to that energy center, then that can kind of help stuff start to move, right? And that people really love that. That is just what I call a dust off when I'm doing somebody like a foot service, a pedicure, or something like that. And people love this. Like, this is just the most like smallest service in energy work that I provide, but they absolutely love it and find it so they just really love it. And they you know, it didn't take very long at all. You're just having somebody breathe, but sometimes somebody needs reminder to breathe, and then to focus that breath, because your breath is so powerful. Focus that breath to a certain area of your chakra, you know, a certain area of your body, into a certain chakra, can really start to move things. But I always start at the bottom and then, work my way up in what I feel like they need. And then always do the top because we need that flow coming in and out. But then at the bottom again, because I feel like sometimes I've left them like when they're on the table and I was just starting this, I'd do like work through all the chakras and then we'd stop at the top. And I feel like, as wonderful a feeling as it is, people leave really flighty and just really in this daze sort of thing. And so now I bring them back down to that root chakra to sort of, okay, let's ground a little bit before I send you out into the world in this lovely, daydreamy thing. But that's just some of the things I do that are just kind of simple. But the breath into the chakra I found very powerful for people, even if they don't understand what they're doing.
May I say something?
Yes.
Sorry. I totally agree with Amanda. I work the same way. I work with chakras on the feet, and I feel when there is a blockage, and I let the clients breathe into the chakra, into this center in the body, and I feel the release, and then they feel lighter after. And I work my chakras through from the root chakra up to the crown chakra. And I feel it on the feet. I feel the blockages. I feel the release, and let the client breathe into it. And they feel it too. They feel something is changing. It's very powerful.
Yes, I totally agree.
What I was going to say is the breath is interesting with the chakras because you get both aspects, the inhalation and the exhalation, right? So the chakras being two-way vortices of energy, there's bringing energy in, and then there's also, and we forget this sometimes, but there's also the need to be able to expel excess energy, right? So that it's not building up and creating over energy, hypertonic kind of conditions anywhere in the body. So when you breathe and then you regulate both aspects, right? Are we bringing it in and are we sending it out? Okay, so we've had a couple different ideas of how we can correct an out of balance chakra, right? You can do it just by holding points and directing flow manually. You can do it through breath. Does anyone have any other techniques that they use when they're working?
I have a set of chakra tuning forks that sometimes want to come out in a session. I tend to work with chakras only if they scan up, or like what Hannah was saying, if someone comes with a particular struggle and it pings me that a certain chakra would be related. My understanding on a grand scheme of things is that chakras are the systems that bring energy into the body and then refuel, so to speak, the meridians. So the chakras are like the batteries that then fuel the meridians, which are then the batteries for the body. Is that accurate, or am I completely off base?
It depends on whose system you're looking at, because the chakra system and the meridian system developed in different parts of the world, right? So the two weren't, like in the original philosophies of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic tradition, the two aren't blended. So you end up with two separate energetic systems, chakras bringing energy in and feeding into nadis, which then feed into the nervous system and the blood, and vice versa, right? Also excess energy can be moved from the blood through the nervous system, right? So there's this two-way flow. Whereas then we have on the TCM side, acupoints that are interfaces, internal, external energy, and then meridians that move it around the body. And in the SIP system, both chakras and meridians can be used as backup energy systems for stressed cells. So it's interesting because I don't usually think about it as being backup systems for meridians, but like, is there an interface between chakras and meridians? Probably, because they're correlated, right? As we move up the body. but it's hard to find a lot of information on that because they were developed and kind of thought of in such different philosophies. Does anybody, has anybody come across that? The idea of chakras and meridians being related in that way?
I mean, to me, it would make sense that, I mean, even if they're not like directly related, but you know, the chakras are moving energy in and out from the body to not you. And the meridians are kind of a closed circuit within your own system, right? So even if it's not like, oh, this chakra is related to this meridian, it's still a difference of like where that energy is coming from. And of course, whatever's bringing energy in from outside is also then providing energy for the flowy part.
Well, aren't all chakras connected to an acupressure point? A meridian point? I mean, just the way they develop separately, but you know, when I think about I haven't ever mapped it out, but aren't they kind of connected?
Yes.
I mean, we have points that we use to indicate chakras. Is that?
Well, like CV1 is the root chakra, right? Now, I haven't ever mapped that out, but I assume it's right there in that area. And I guess the throat chakra, I don't know, but I mean, there's so, you know, there's an overlap, and that's just I don't know what you'd call that, sort of a natural overlap, not necessarily an energetic one, but
Correlation, not causation.
yeah. Yeah. And I just thought something else I just thought of. I see a network chiropractor, and she's often telling me that to visualize light coming through my crown chakra, going straight through my body and out my root chakra, because she says it gets diverted some places. And then she'll also go around and she'll say, oh, okay, your heart chakra right here, breathe into it, like you were saying about breathing into it, and she'll swirl around it, because I guess that's Donna Eden does that, right? Going around the chakras either direction, but that's what she'll do. Then she'll say breathe into it and breathe into it, and then she'll come back, and I was breathing into it as best as I knew, and she was like, oh yeah, that's better now. So it's those are some other different techniques that I just thought of when you were talking about the breathing, and someone was doing that.
So because we have those midline meridians, front and back of body, with the conception vessel and the governing vessel, there are points, like there are definitely acupressure points that are going to correlate with both the front and rear aspects of each one of those chakras, right? What I meant before was more like these developed in different parts of the world. So there was never this idea that like, oh, what? Central vessel 21 is feeding into the throat chakra. But I mean, if we think about it, almost all of our philosophies around healing and energy and stuff came from the fact that people could do things and saw things and then designed a system to try to make sense of it, right? This is how we move from magic to science, as we see things and then we go, okay, well, wait a minute, there's got to be a reason why that happens, right? And then we start trying to like develop systems that explain it. So it's totally possible in my that there were healers in these different parts of the world, and there's other energy systems in other parts of the world too, right? That were able to kind of do things and see things, and then they decided to create maps to make sense of it. But they may have been seeing some of the same kind of things. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can see that there's an energy flow happening here, whether we declare that it's an acupoint or whether we declare that it's a chakra. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, take it one step further, and they say that we all originated, I think, is it in Africa somewhere? That if you go backwards, there may have been this awareness that over time, as people spread to different areas, they developed a system, but it all came from the same source. That's what I think anyway.
Yes. All right. So we've got breath, we have movement, swirling, tuning forks. Any other ways that people have been working with their chakras?
I'll go one more time. So like in between the foot thing and knowing about SIPs and all of that, which is much more specific and everything. Before that, I would just sort of stand, and I'm using myself as a grounded, I don't know what to call it, but I'm grounding myself, and then I'm just feeling in their auric field above their chakras, and maybe there's a disconnect between let's say it feels blocked in their sacral chakra and it feels blocked in their throat chakra, something like this. And so I would just like use my hands and help provide a connection there. I don't that's where you said the magic to the science, because I went from I don't know why this works, but I trust that it works and I can feel that it works, to okay, here's the reasons why it works that somebody's figured out. And oh, okay, great. So we can get even deeper here. But I don't know what you would even call that, where you're just like, I'm trying to provide a circuit here with my own hands and body that can then flow through me. It's not about me. I'm just trying to use the energy from my own body to help them balance. And then it tells a story, like, so whatever kind of would come to mind over holding holding that space for them over their chakras would kind of tell a story, like whatever comes to mind for that chakra, like, oh, maybe you're not being heard, or you're not being you need to take back your personal power, whatever it is, just from like, what would you call that? I don't even know. Where you're just like trying to use your own body as holding over somebody's chakras. I have no idea what, I just called it chakra balancing, so I don't know what it's called or why that but
that
it
like,
makes more sense with the more education that I'm getting and stuff as to why that works, as like your body being like a battery and all those things. But that's just one more way that I was using chakras.
well, that's like Reiki, isn't it? Kind of a form of Reiki.
I'm not a Reiki practitioner, but yes, that is exactly, I mean, people are using symbols and things like that, but yes, they're using their hands. I just was just doing it. I didn't have any Reiki background or anything, but yes, they're using the same techniques, just with also symbols. So I don't know.
I would say, to me, that sounds kind of like co-regulation. And both in the trauma, like post-traumatic growth healing, if the practitioner who is doing the trauma healing with the client, you have to have a regulated nervous system to hold the space for the client's nervous system. And then the other thing that came to mind was the Heart Math Institute research, where if you are in heart coherence, that is a stronger field that you're holding than for your client to be able to become coherent as well. So that's what came to mind for me when you were describing what you were doing.
Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, we do that in SIPS 3. If you think about that correction that we do in SIPS, where we're trying to basically hold an organized, coherent, energetic pattern so that specific cells can come up, or tissues or DNA or whatever it is can regulate to that. But in its simplest form, a long time ago now, like we're going back like 15, 16 years, I took a class in quantum touch. And quantum touch is so simple, because the whole foundation of it is really just, you're going to hold a really stable, coherent pattern, just like Kasha was saying, right? And when you hold that, you create through entrainment something that other people's energy field is going to use as like a regulator, right? And so then, because if it's the strongest field, then their field comes up to it. And so, yeah, Amanda, when I'm working with those chakras, even when I'm bringing in a flow here, my other hand's over the chakra is doing that, right? Like I'm thinking in my head, what is a perfect solar plexus chakra feel like? Like, what is that flow? What is that rhythm that should be there? And I kind of imagine that being here in this hand. And then it's like, I'm holding that, right? And so now your body can feel that and start to resonate along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool.
Can I add to the methods of working with? Because I end up doing a few different kind of corrections. I mean, in SIP 6, we have a chakra light correction, which I end up using quite a bit, which is very similar to what Amanda's been describing, where you just kind of very gently holding and you're imagining the color and doing that little visualization, which is quite nice. Sometimes though, I also end up doing basically like a color balance, like a touch for health, like 5-element kind of color balance, but for chakra. And it's when I'm like in those chakra basics worksheets and it's the color that shows up. And I can use one of the affirmations that's written there and just have like that affirmation in that color and, you know, ESR or something just really simple like that. Sometimes also helps. I've had the notes show up and I don't have tuning forks, but I have like a piano keyboard that I can use. And the other thing that I end up doing sometimes is it's a correction actually more for like energetic cords, but where you're just holding like over GV20 and over the chakra in whatever space of the aura. And I end up often doing visualization with that as well. But all of them are just very gentle, which I quite like.
Yeah, I mean, all the things that we're describing are different forms of frequency, right? So anything that is offering a new frequency can be helpful for the chakra to stabilize itself, whether that's coming through the vibration of your hands, whether that's coming from a tuning fork, whether that's coming from a piano keyboard, whether that's coming from the color violet. I mean, whatever it is, right?
I just remembered one more way I think of chakras showing up in a session, which is when I am working with something like Wei Qi or something where I end up kind of scanning the body for where the imbalance is, like physically. And if I notice that it's in the same place on front and back, that there's an imbalance in like their energy field. So if I'm working in Wei Qi or aura or whatever, and I notice it's the same place front and back, then I will also check chakra. I know I was going back a couple conversations, but I just remembered.
I love that too. You can use like in one of the SIPS levels, I think it might be 4, it has all of the chakra centers listed right in there and some qualities of each one or whatever. So even if I don't have points for a certain chakra or whatever, I can still have the mode and know that I can hold space or just, okay, that characteristic that's scanning up. That's nice that you don't, you know, obviously you don't have to have points to work with chakras, but it's nice that if you don't have that, now that I am working with the points, to be able to still go in and work with that characteristic of that chakra more specifically than I was just doing it before, you know, like that. So that's nice. One more
to
way
this
too that I would like work with it is I would teach yoga, and at the end of every yoga session, I would do a creative visualization for people, and just whatever came to mind, is what I would do. But sometimes it was this beautiful thing where you're imagining yourself as a tree. And so you're having whoever it is, and I use this still to this day. If I have a kid acting up while I'm trying to work with the mom or something like this, then we'll do, um, uh, breathe into your, uh, you know, breathe into your base of your spine and imagine that your roots are growing, and I'm just, snippeting this, and then you're moving into your trunk and you're, imagine that your trunk's growing, and then, on up until like you're moving into your arms, and that's like you're essentially telling him to breathe in each chakra, but they don't know that. You're just describing a tree and how you could look like a tree and how you're going to blossom into fruits and flowers or whatever. And so you're getting like a child or adult, but it's very useful for the child to get them to breathe into those centers. And it's such a calming thing, and then bring them back down to their roots. And so they kind of calm down quite a bit while their mom's still trying to get her service completed, So that's a good way to easily use the chakra system.
So far, we've been discussing the major chakras, right? Which are the ones that people tend to think about when we say the chakra system, because that's the one that we see in the pictures with the rainbow coming up the body. But remember, we have minor chakras as well. So 21 easily identified minor chakras, and then also like small minor chakras at each joint in the body. And so I'm curious if anybody has, do you work with the minor chakras? And if you do you have other ways of kind of addressing and playing with that? Or do you have questions about dealing with those?
Really just hands and feet are and your earth star and the one above too, those. But as far as joints and stuff, I really haven't worked with that, so I'd like to know more about that.
For me, again, it comes up intuitively. As much as I muscle test, a lot of the times I find I just get the body tells me a story, and often for the clients I work with, the foot chakras are gunked up often, and so we clear those, and sometimes the body just or the person's guidance team tells me we have to clear all the minor chakras too, so then I just put them all in with the chakra mode. I don't necessarily know exactly where they all are, but so I don't go looking unless it comes up, is basically what I'm saying, but for the minor ones.
I had an interesting experience with a client on Wednesday this week, where they wanted their priority was to work on their eyes. And so that's what we were focusing on in the session. And it came up with the points for chakra transduction stress, chakra shadow, and so I made an assumption. Normally, when we're talking about eyes, it's brow chakra, right? And so I came here and challenged brow chakra, and it's not a problem. But I mean, I definitely had the points for these chakras and chakra shadows show up. And so then I looked, and it was actually those minor chakras. There's minor chakras behind the eyes. And there was a chakra shadow due to trauma that she had seen and was in denial about, did not want to have seen, does not want to see, right? Childhood stuff. And that was what we ended up working with. And so it was in my head, we don't have a lot of distinct protocols. I've never seen a distinct protocol written out for working with the minor chakras, but they can be really powerful agents in the body, and they can be really powerful to work with. The foot chakras, yeah, and I know that we do work with the foot chakras in SIPs, and as Helga is saying, with like reflexology and stuff like that as well, right? Anybody else have any experiences working with those smaller energy centers? No. If you read like Barbara Ann Brennan's stuff, when she talks about the minor chakras, they're not as like they're minor chakras because there's less energy lines crossing there, and then they're not as big, right? So you don't get the same, I don't know that you get the same vision or the same like boom boom kind of feeling from them that you do from some of the major ones, right? But they're still kind of important. Maybe we can take just the last couple minutes here before we're kind of winding down. Lisa mentioned something in one of the, like, I think the very first comment that someone not me made in this meeting today about reactivity. And it stuck in my brain because I work with chakra reactivity and I don't hear a lot of other people doing it. And so I found myself wondering where that came from. And also, like, do other people here work with the idea of chakra reactivity? And how do we work with that?
Well, with me, it's from brain integration. Every time I do chakra mode, if it doesn't show, I then go up to the top of my head and do chakra mode. And that tells me it's reactivity, and I look for 2 chakras. Otherwise, if it's 1, I'll do priority possibly to, so I'm generally working with 1 or 2 chakras. And it's also, and it's very revealing. It's like the throat chakra and the root chakra, you know, or the solar sacral is a common one. And those relationships are generally no surprise. And I do the same thing with emotion mode. It's emotion mode. There's 1 emotion, or reactive is 2 emotions. So that's it.
I didn't know that that was standard in brain integration. That's interesting. Yeah. Anybody else working with chakra reactivity, and how does that come up for you?
I would think, like, hearing everyone talk about this, we could even have as a set of pre-checks, you know, you do your standard pre-checks, but you could almost include a chakra pre-check of some kind of like the reactivity, or just run through them all and see, is one of them under-energized, over-energized, whatever, however you frame that. I did that. So when I think I took one of the lower SIPS levels, and Farah was one of the students, and I ended up chatting with her afterwards, and she said what she always does is, like, the way she sets up her sessions is she always enters mind mode, brain as organ, and then chakra and aura, and just always includes that as the pre-frame for the rest of the session. So I do that sometimes, but not always. But I think a pre-check would be prudent. You know, why not? For checking all the other things, why not check this too?
Kasha, do you when you do that, do you do chakra, and then do you look for a specific chakra, or you just throw in general chakra?
I just enter chakra mode in, and then aura mode in. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the term throwing chakra. It's like throwing shade, but like in a light and sparkly way. Okay, for me, chakra reactivity comes up the same in a similar context as muscular reactivity. So I'm talking about it in the same, you know, in Touch for Health, for instance. Reactivity is when the 2 things are balanced by themselves. So if you challenge them individually, they're okay. But if you challenge them in relation to each other, one of them is in an over-facilitated and one is in an under-facilitated state. It's like this one can't be strong while this one is present. And so when I'm working with it more in that context. And for me, again, you know, Lisa was saying the correlations are often very revealing and they make sense. And Amanda mentioned a combination at the beginning of, like, for instance, throat and sacral. And throat and sacral, I think, are probably the 2 that I see the most often in a reactive state for women. And I suspect it's because of the difficulty in speaking my truth and communicating clearly and communicating from a place of strength. and our own ideas about our sensuality, sexuality, femininity, right? And so when there's issues in relationships, you often see this pairing being reactive, where it's like, if I'm speaking my truth and I'm being heard, I can't be sexy, I can't be pretty, I can't be feminine, I can't be taken, like, because I need to be taken seriously, so I can't be those things, right? And then it's the other way. When I'm being that, can I also be assertive and strong and be heard? And so I don't know, I find that combination comes up a lot. And when you explain this to people, they have their huge, like, kind of aha moments about their own patterns.
I think that's absolutely, yes, so common. And I think that the frequently, I feel like there's this like overall like consciousness of shame embedded in people that really propels that sacral and being heard in women specifically. I don't, I've had this come up and like do womb clearings or things like this, but I think it's more than just a specific thing. I think like, oh, we're supposed to, be submissive or be all these things that whoever came up with, and I think that we're trying to clear that away, right? So more and more people are working like this, and it's clearing the overall unity consciousness of this. But I feel like that's such a common thing that it almost has to be part of it or something. I don't know. But yeah, really frequent with that combination, particularly with people.
Yeah. The equivalent one I see with men has to do with solar plexus and heart. Yeah. Ego versus emotion, right? If we want to put it into like the most base kind of terms. And can this be open while still keeping like a sense of being strong and powerful in who you are? All right.
I do also work with reactive chakras. Sometimes I'll just, there's a couple that are stressed and I just work with them together. Sometimes it'll show up in my gem sheets under reactivity, which is in structure. And so I'll go, is it like, do I need to go find a muscle? And if it's no, then I'll check multifaceted energy mode. And be like, okay, is it an energy system? And so then sometimes it's chakras and like a few chakras. And sometimes it's like even something like we were talking earlier about chakra with meridian or something like that. You can end up with kind of combinations of things that you wouldn't normally think of, but I don't know if other people do that.
All right.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a
interesting
few.
too. Sorry, it's people's belief system, like about around their financial things or their safety or things like this, and then how that affects, their belief systems. Yeah, again, just reactive. Like if you have this certain belief or you have this certain feeling in your root chakra, then your mind is going to be clearly affected by that. So having those specific points where you can get in there and like, oh, belief systems about this or whatever, and open up that root chakra, and then it's going to help, these certain concepts we've got in our mind that are blocking us from other things, definitely lots of reactivity in that when I was just doing what I was calling chakra balancing. I just didn't know, I don't know that was the name of it, but it was definitely, okay, I feel this here in this chakra, and then I need to move over here because individually they feel they're okay. Maybe, 6 out of 7 feel okay and we work on one, but now I go back and the reactivity between two doesn't feel. Yeah, I totally get that. I just find it so interesting, like, oh, I just never knew that's what it was called. But yeah, now I do. So, it's so interesting.
Right. So as we wrap up the conversation, there's a few here that maybe haven't really contributed so far. And I know it's difficult if it's not your first language. So I'm not picking on anyone, but if there is anything that you would like to say or contribute before we are wrapping up here, now is the time. All right. I am very happy that we were able to kind of start this up again. So I used to host these monthly, and I think we're going to try to get back into that as a habit. So that being said, as I said, we're going to put the recordings in those couple places. You can watch for that. Also, if you have an idea of a topic that you would like to see considered in one of these gatherings, please let us know. And you can let us know, on social media or by sending an email to insight@gemskinesiologycollege.com, or by letting the guys know at Nolative. I mean, those are all ways of letting us know, and we'll come up with a schedule for the next few meetings so that we can keep having these conversations, because I don't know about all of you, but for me, it feels so helpful to hear how other people are working with things, and somebody says something and it sparks a new idea, and you get to compare different modalities. So thank you. And it's lovely to have people from so many different countries here together today. All right. Thank you so much. I am going to run because I have to be somewhere else at 10 sharp, but anyone who's still chatting, Hannah's going to keep the space open. Bye, everybody.
I just like to throw something out there that I find, particularly with women, I find a lot of times it's solar and sacral chakra come up because they don't feel they have power, and then they present themselves to the world in one way, but they don't, not necessarily the way they feel. So they feel insecure, but they try to project something else, or sometimes they're projecting insecurity. So I find those show up frequently with women, and if they do, again, it fits into their story.
Hannah, can I just ask a question? When you're working like in SIPs or gems or something, and either chakra comes up or chakra shadow or whatever, would you then at that point challenge like the reactivity to, like, because I'm just trying to see like how I would be able to identify reactivity if it's needed within that?
Honestly, I forget to check it, but you absolutely could at that point. So if it needs to show up, for me, it shows up under reactivity in gems.
Okay. Because I did have
like if I'm gonna forget to so like chakras show up one way, and if it needs to be that specifically, it shows up under structure, because that's where it's written as reactivity. And then I do check multifaceted energy, if it's not a muscle, and partly that's because now I teach gems flow, and now I say that when I'm teaching it. I'm like, if this shows up, it might be a muscle, and then you can go check which muscle, and it might not be. And so now that is how I use it. But also, if like chakra mode shows up, I will just check them all, right? And sometimes it feels like there's just one, and sometimes it feels like there's more than one. And if there's more than one, then I would also just check, like, do those things have the same problem? Like, are they both, under energy or whatever, being affected by the same thing, or are they working kind of against each other?
Okay, cool.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, totally. Thank you very much.
When I find chakra reactive, I check all of the chakras, because sometimes, not very often, when it's typically we're looking for two, I actually find a third, and it's usually the root chakra. So occasionally it can be three, and again, that makes sense too.
As another side note, I don't know if this is helpful, but one of the things that I kind of did was I made my own scan sheet of like all the modes, because once you start doing SIPs. There's a lot of them. And I was finding that like it would scan up that I needed to go into a level for that scan sheet because it wanted me to enter a specific mode that maybe I hadn't thought of or whatever. So I put it all on one sheet. And then sometimes that helps me with, okay, like what am I looking for in this? And then you can ask questions from there. And it allows me to kind of pick some things out that I wouldn't necessarily, like I'd have to go really roundabout to kind of get there, it feels like.
Well,
And
and
then
that's really helpful. And especially if you think of this as being like reactivity mode and you wrote it down, right? On a list like that, then it would be very easy to come up. Because whenever that happens, like I might do that now. So whenever that happens, when I go into a level specifically for a mode, I then ask, is it like, Jeff, is this times something else, right? And then sometimes I'll end up with a combination of like modes and points that tell a story. And I think that's, yeah, it would definitely be helpful to have them all in one place.
Sometimes I end up, yeah, exactly, with a combination of things that I never would have come up with otherwise. Like it seems like it always ends up making sense in the end. But in that moment, it's like, okay, sure, we'll just do that then.
Yeah. The other day, like Lisa was saying, sometimes you end up with like 3 and you're like, okay. The other day I had Chakra Shadow show up and I was like, okay, well, which one then? And it wasn't 1, it was 3. And they are all being affected by this. So it wasn't reactivity, but they're all being affected by the same issue, but it was root, throat, and crown. And it's like, and it made sense for the person I was working on because there's issue with bringing in energy, there's issue with sense of home, and there's issue with like communication and connection with the people around them. I was like, okay, so these are all being affected by the same issue, this same kind of shadow. And like, of course, that's going to cause problems, right? If you've got all of the 3 of these out of balance for the same reason, like that's a huge imbalance. So.
And in that case, you stack them all?
Yeah, so I had the SIPs, there's a SIPs point for Chakra Shadow, and so I then asked which one, and I just stacked all 3 just by like scanning up. And then I went looking for like, where is the stress, right? What is the shadow? What is the thing that's causing this problem? And so then I write all those things down underneath that. I don't know, I work with it differently depending on how it comes up. We all kind of do.
Yeah, so the other day I had Chakra Shadow come up and I did the same thing, which was like chakra mode, go find the chakra. And then I was asking like, what was part of the stress or causing the stress? And I went through my modes like structural, chemical, emotional, got hit on emotion. And then I went into like, is this a element emotion or related to a SIP? So then I went into SIPs and then I found the emotion and did the points and stuff like that. That makes sense, right? Okay. It was interesting. Do you find then you're going to do, when you're in SIPs like that, and that comes up like that, and like I'm going through and I'm asking like, am I doing like amperage and resistance? Is it time to correct, or am I adding more SIPs? Like I don't often do a chakra correction. It's often a different correction. Do you find that too?
I can see Sharissa nodding. Do you have?
I think it depends.
Okay.
It really just depends. Sometimes it comes up at the end because quite often, I'm entering like this huge package of information. And then at the end, I'm doing, sometimes only a couple, sometimes more like corrections, right? And so sometimes it comes up in that, or sometimes it doesn't. Also, I do myself also tend to use like chakra mode and picking a chakra as a way of getting more information relating to whatever that thing is that we're working on. So it's not always even that the chakra itself is out of balance. and needs to be balanced. It's that whatever is affecting it was like related to the things that the chakra is related to, right? And so in that case, I mean, even though I've been working with the chakra, it's not necessarily a balance that's required. So, but I find it's always been like that, right? And especially when you start mixing all your things, it's like, you know, oh, it takes me over to dimensions, and then it'll ask me to enter like some SIPS points for that stuff. And then, you know, and so it's never really like one way, like how you learn how we do it is never really how it works in a session.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what I find too. I'm the same as you. I'm in and out of everything. And then at the end,
I just feel like whatever comes up, whatever comes up
is what they need. Yeah.
Is what they need. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I figured.
Hi, Amanda. Glad you could join us. I need to go too. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Hi. Yeah, we can turn off the recording whenever people are kind of done here. Now we're just kind of chatting now, but yeah, I completely agree with Teresa. Like, I often end up in those sheets just for information, just because that's where it happens to be written the most clearly. And so like, if I'm writing notes, I'll write down that that's where I found it. And then if that's relevant later, then that's great. But yeah, no, that definitely happens. And then like you guys said, like when you're mixing all your modalities and stuff, the corrections that come up sometimes are not really related to the things that showed up in session, right? Sometimes you're doing all physical stuff and then it's a chakra correction, or, you know, vice versa. So, but yeah, I also end up doing usually a few corrections at the end. And so, yeah.
Well, and like Alexis has said too, with sometimes like when entering points, sometimes it's not always like that point, but that's the point that has the closest frequency to what, like, you know, of what you're entering. And so I just kind of always assume that maybe this doesn't make complete sense, but maybe this is just the closest thing that I have in my toolbox for what they need at that moment. And that's why I'm doing it. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions or things people want to add?
I just have one thing, and this is, I don't know if this is a Donna Eden thing or not, but I read somewhere that when you're working on chakras, it's best to start at the root chakra and work your way up. Now that's different than what we're talking about, but if you went to look at chakras, you can do priority, and obviously that would override it, but this is somebody that wouldn't be doing priority. But then they said sometimes if you start at the root chakra and you move your way up, it's too intense for the person. So then you start with the crown chakra and you move it down. And this is basically doing the swirling. Like if you want to go, I guess that's Dawn Eden, you know, you swirl each chakra. So you start swirling and go up this way, but sometimes it's way too much for the person, and sometimes they need to go counterclockwise and so on. But just that idea that starting with the root can be too disruptive for a person. So this isn't something that we typically do. I just thought it was an interesting point that starting at the root and going up could be disruptive for a person because there's too much, you know, junk there or whatever. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, and then in SIPS 4, Alexis gave us like a chakra balance to do. And we could do that like on ourselves or on our partner or whatever. And the way that it works for me is that if it's okay and the client or the person is capable or able to deal with each one of those at that level, then we would go on, right? So when I was working with me, I got to make almost all I think I just have to do crown is the last one or something, right? But at that point when I was working on me, that's as far as it wanted to go. So the body let me know that that's enough for today. That's what we're going to do, and come back to this later, right? So I thought that's awesome because, like, yeah, it's great for us to balance our chakras like that, and then also going within what the body can handle at that point in time. That was my experience anyway.
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely reasons to do them in that order. right? Like that's kind of the order that they are going to want to open and clear in, right? Like you're not supposed to be fully open crown chakra in your teenage years. Like it's just not going to happen, right? That comes with age and with wisdom and with that connection. So like that would be one reason, I think, to kind of move up that way. And the other one would be almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of stuff, where it's like if your foundation basic needs aren't being met, there's no way you can be enlightened. It just doesn't work that way. And if you try, you're going to cause problems for yourself. So like that, I guess that would be another reason to kind of go through them in that order. But I think like that idea of it being overwhelming at some point would really depend on where the person has blockages, right? Yeah. But you're right, Lisa, like we never really work with it quite like that in our sessions, just the way that the modalities that we tend to work with kind of go about things. But you absolutely could. If you figured out that was like the person's issue was like this alignment of this energy system, like just go through it.
Yeah, and that's what Donna Eden does. She works differently than we do, and this is one of her techniques. So anyway, I have to leave. So thank you, everybody. It was wonderful, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you guys for chatting. I will turn off the recording.
Thanks.
And
bye, guys.
Have it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Nice to chat.